All right, it is July 3rd, 2024, and this is a kickoff call for uniting WordPress YouTubers, which is just honestly a huge thanks to everyone who's joined this call and everyone who's doing the work to educate folks. I post YouTube videos, but I do not consider myself at the caliber of the folks on this call and the hard work that you all do to educate folks, bring people along, share cool new things, all that good stuff. And so this is an effort to get folks in the same room. I know you all probably talk in other avenues, and to get feedback into WordPress core so we can learn from what you all are seeing in your interactions with users, what videos are really popular, what people are asking to see, what bugs you might find, all that sort of stuff. I want there to be some bi-directional push-pull on that. And tied to it, I want to be able to see what we can do. Nick and I both are sponsor contributors to the project, and he also does videos. And so I would love to see what we can do to help you all, whether it's providing information, answering questions, all that sort of stuff. Just empower you all to do what you all are already doing, and contributing back to the project, whether you realize it or not, by the content that you're sharing. So that is to set the stage, kind of the gist of the call. And with that, I do have a couple of, I want to do intros first, and get a sense of name, location, link to your channel, maybe why you got into YouTube, but I want to keep that pretty tight, just because we do have a number of folks on the call. And then we can dive into some of the discussion topics, and I want there to be time at the end for open floor. So we're going to do a round robin. I'm going to pick on Josh. Josh Hall, will you go first?
Honored to go first. Well, everybody, great to meet you. I don't think I've officially met anyone, so great to meet everybody and see everybody. I have a YouTube channel under my personal brand. My website is joshhall.co. I actually have most resources about the business of web design, but I am a WordPress guy, so I do have a lot of tutorials around WordPress. I'm kind of known for Divi. Also, Divi is my page builder of choice, and I have a web design community called Web Designer Pro, so that's where all of my resources funnel to.
Amazing. I know it's hard to capture you all into one umbrella, which I love. We need people from all different sides, especially thinking about the business of a lot of this stuff, even though I'm dedicated to an open source project.
Oh, and I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I meant to mention that. I think I missed that.
Cool. Joel, will you go next?
Yes, how you doing, everybody? My name is Joel Rivera. I'm from the Bronx, New York, and I am an independent solo WordPress developer. I focus on WordPress themes, plugins, custom solutions, do some side work with freelancing. And I have a YouTube channel under my brand name, pixemweb.com, Pixemweb. And basically what I do is teach people how to code custom WordPress themes and help people within their WordPress journey. Been doing this for about a decade. Part of the old guard where everything was just PHP, classic editor, and making the transition now to hybrid themes and the block theme nature of WordPress itself. It's been a journey since the beginning, and like everything, it evolves, and we have to evolve our communities as well.
Yeah, I loved finding your channel and seeing that progression as well.
Yeah, I try to also teach people how to, code in a more secure manner. So I'm doing a lot of videos now in terms of implementing different type of static analysis tools and dynamic analysis tools with PHP Stand, PHP SOM, PHP Fan, and a whole bunch of other tools. So fun stuff.
Very cool. Yeah. Barna, I'm going to pick on you next. Good to see you also.
Yeah, long time not talked. Hi, everyone. Good evening, based on the time zone for me. I'm Barna. I'm kind of the WordPress guy in Hungary, because that's where I'm from, Hungary. It's a little bit different situation in Hungary, because in Hungarian, there are not many tutorials and information available like on the English channels. So for the last 6 years, I've been doing free tutorials and free complete course on how to use WordPress, how to use XYZ page builders, and how to build a website. Extra tutorials, trying to keep people up with the WordPress latest news, like a week ago with the 6.6 update. And yeah, I'm just kind of doing all that and doing some private help to keep the coffee machine going. So that's me.
Love it. Yeah, you have such a in with the Hungarian community. It's really amazing to think about all the folks you've educated there. Nick, will you go next?
Me? Oh, wait, yeah, I'm the only Nick here. Perfect. Yes. Hello, everyone. I am a full-time sponsored contributor working with and Automatic. I work on a team focused on developer relations. So we do a lot of content, not as much video, but a lot of written content and documentation creation around developer-related topics in WordPress, primarily focused on what's coming out in the latest releases. So if there's a new feature coming out, I'll write an article about it and try to educate developers and hopefully everyone else who's creating content around WordPress on how those new features work and how they can benefit the community.
Good job making that succinct. Jamie, will you go next?
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm midway packing through a cycling trip to Mallorca, and I've just realized I don't have enough room. So I'm slight panic stations of what I'm going to do about that. I run a plugin business and a WordPress training business and a YouTube channel focused around Gutenberg, I think, as a sort of shortcut.
Love it. You got the logo right behind you, which helps. Mark, can you go next?
For sure, guys. Great to meet you, and thank you so much for the invitation to the call. My name is Mark Szymanski. I'm based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, United States. I started a WordPress agency back in 2018. I've been doing that completely full-time for at least a few years now. Just love the platform, love the space. Started with Elementor as a page builder, recently moved to Bricks, always watching, Jamie's content, everyone's content about Gutenberg, love the progression, everything like that. Happy to be a part of whatever conversations we can have around those types of things.
Sweet. Love it. My dad's side of the family is from Pittsburgh, so Yin's
Nice.
guys, I can, yeah.
Yins, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. Just here. Just here.
So funny.
Yep.
VJ, I don't know if you're able to chat, but I'd love to hear you next if you can. Sweet.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Vijay. Based out of India, Bangalore. We own 3 brands, that is Extensions, Reachip, and Elerbu. So Extensions creates. We have a lot of plugins, WordPress and WooCommerce related, and then Elerbu, it's more into content. So we create a lot of content related to WooCommerce as well as WordPress and e-commerce in general. We have a YouTube channel which we try to help people by creating a lot of content related to WooCommerce again. WordPress too, right? Yeah, also that's all about it. And you will find a lot of learning kind of videos in Learnbo. In the website, we have an interview section where you will see a lot of WordPress entrepreneurs given an interview for us. So that's a great section to go on with. So yeah, so that's how it is. Thank you.
Okay, cool. You all cover a lot. Yeah. Let's jump to Derek next.
Buddy, Derek Hanson out of Ames, Iowa, with Automatic, working for a special projects team where I help build and launch sites as a technical account manager. So we're really focused on testing the latest and greatest of Gutenberg and pushing everything to the edge and contributing back into GitHub and to the various plugins throughout the ecosystem as much as we can. So excited to be here and hopefully be a part of this community in the near future.
I love it. Nathan's driving, so yeah, that's totally fine. Nathan Wrigley, thanks for joining. Drive safe. Yeah, WP Tavern, WordPress Weekly, like there's a lot of stuff with Nathan. I'll save an introduction for him. But Jackson, I think you might be the last person. Do you mind going?
Not at all. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, cool. Jackson, out of Brighton, south coast of the UK, and also southern Italy, Puglia, where I spend as much time as possible doing WordPress in both places, at WP Jackson on YouTube, in making videos for about 8+ years, kind of on and off. So, you know, consistency, number one rule of YouTube, but hasn't been my forte. But back on it this year, and it's been going great. Was an old original theme type dude, and then sort of got into page building very early, moved to Elementor for a few years, and then about 2 years ago kind of fell in love with block theming when it kind of started coming of age, and haven't looked back on that. And that's the focus now of the channel. And yeah, really enjoying this new era of WordPress. It's brilliant. And yeah, thanks for the invite. It's great to be a part of this.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm sure you are noting it as we're going around. It's like some folks are focusing on developers, some are on the business side, some are with page builders, some are with, educating about Woo. That's intentional. I tried to get a spread because that reflects the WordPress space. And if there's folks on this call that you think would benefit in the future, if we do more of these, like, please let me know. This is definitely meant to be an open invite, and this is who was able to make this one. So if you're watching this and you're like, why am I not on here? Like, message me. Let's like come on the next one. Because this is not meant to be exclusive. So let me see what Nathan. Yeah. So with that in mind, I was originally going to kick off talking about feedback loops, but I actually, as I'm listening to everyone talk, I'm curious to start with a more open-ended question around what your main challenges are with your channels, and starting there very broad. If folks are game for that, just because I know sometimes in the folks that I've talked to, sometimes it's keeping up with what's happening in WordPress. Sometimes it's coming up with ideas and new ways to take on content. Sometimes it's like getting other people to contribute to videos or come on to the channel. So I'm curious if you all had to summarize like top challenges, whether it's like 1 to 3, what immediately comes to mind? It could be like posting regularly, like Jackson just said, it's like hard to kind of get into the groove. I definitely use release cycles for that to dive back in. But yeah, I'd be curious to start with that. I think that might be a bit of an easier question potentially.
I know one thing for me that I'm seeing is such a split between the page builders. Like I think Mark mentioned he's now using bricks. I found that that's really common, that people, at least in my world, tend to focus much more on the builders of choice versus WordPress core. So like that's the unifying aspect of all WordPress developers, but it does seem like there's a lot more questions that I see in groups, and overwhelm and interest in the actual page builders rather than WordPress itself. I have some folks who are using strictly Gutenberg or block editor based stuff, but yeah, I think that's one thing that's a bit challenging, is like the questions tend to be more about page builders versus WordPress, at least from what I'm seeing.
That's a great call out. And by the way, I don't know, Nick and I will never be offended, even though we contribute to a WordPress project. Like, this is about having an open dialogue. This is not meant to debate merits of anything. So you will not offend me by talking about bugs in the editor. Like, I probably have opened more than my fair share. So just want to put that out there and make folks aware. Yeah. What else comes to mind?
I guess if I could jump in at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, like what Jackson said, consistency is important, and finding that consistent flow of content to keep on message is always a struggle, right? Especially when you have a side business that you're running, you're juggling a lot of different responsibilities. For me, I try to cover on my channel probably a little bit too much varying type of content. I jump between just straight up how to code a custom WordPress theme, to how to secure your WordPress website, to which plugins are the best, to which themes are the best. And then I go into regular like PHP tutorials, HTML tutorials, and stuff like that. So the consistency is key. But for me, I'm trying to roadmap, and probably somebody else will get a good idea out of this. I'm thinking about my next journey will be, how do we get classic editors, classic developers like myself to transition to the block theme Gutenberg type of projects moving forward, because that is obviously the future. And that transition is where we are right now. So I'm trying to figure out what's the best type of content. And WordPress has put out a bunch of good tools with the WordPress Playground, with WordPress Studio, giving developers a lot of good tools. So I'm playing around with that now and just trying to figure out what is the best content to put forward to one, show the transition from a full PHP classic themes type developer to a hybrid and or block themes type developer, and what pain points developers might face moving forward. Because like Josh said, a lot of people are using page builders, but there's still a large universe of people who are using just WordPress regular themes, whether it's a theme from WordPress.org or from another site and stuff like that. So that's basically what I'm focusing on.
Yeah, I absolutely concur with that. I
Mm.
was at the Brighton WordPress meetup last night. I mean, it was only tiny because it was no speakers. It was like the sort of let's get together for a pint kind of vibe, which is not bad. Not
I
a
love
bad way
that.
to talk about WordPress over a pint. It's, yeah, I can think of worse things to do. But the thing I found, because I'm blocks all in, and the thing I found, there's only sort of 8 or 10 people sort of there, but the majority of Joel, the majority of people there were just not into the new era of block theming and blocks in Gutenberg, which I found pretty strange. And we did have a discussion about where's it coming through, where are people coming through, how's the messaging going out there, and I guess this is what this this is all about.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, there's a lot of people with not even half a foot in the future of WordPress at the moment, as far as I can see.
Hey, Jackson, can I ask you real quick on that note, the folks who who are using the block editor or just WordPress based core stuff, are they OG WordPressers, or are there new people getting into WordPress who are interested in the block editor?
Well, no, that's what I'm saying, Josh. Almost every single person, apart from a couple of automaticians that were there, were pure classic themers, and I was talking about stuff, and I was going, what you don't know about, synced patterns, and this is from whatever, however many versions ago. And I'm almost sort of doing a sort of like mini sort of streaming session at the at the pub table, sort of telling everyone, well, you've got to get into it, dudes. So yeah, it's quite the reverse. They're all still very much hanging on to that PHP classic vibe.
Gotcha.
If
Yeah, I
may.
think that is a huge challenge. Yeah, please.
Yeah, adding one note from my side, so we are into even developing WordPress plugins as well as the content creation related to WordPress plugins. So Extensions is the site where you will see the WordPress plugin which we develop. So with respect to the Gutenberg, right, most of our plugins are more backend heavy, not that front-end heavy. Even then, there are confusions for the developer, so whatever we have been doing in the backend, but yeah, few front-end side also say for checkout page, right? Few of the things are not even now, not really working. So what I personally feel as a developer, Gutenberg, it's not fully ready yet, comparing to the previous, the older way of doing the things, right? Maybe it will be ready soon. So that makes but I know there is a hard push happening from WordPress side to get into the Gutenberg and then Rails stuff, right? But these kind of pain points are causing confusion to the developers. So that could be one of the reason people are little hesitant, especially in the front-end developers, right? The theme side developers, little hesitant to get into Gutenberg yet. Maybe there are issues which are unknown because they are heavily dependent on that, right? So that's what I personally feel like.
Yeah.
My
We hear a
situation
lot of
is
that
more
from
like,
developers, so I hear you.
Yeah.
yeah, just go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, Barna, please.
I think my situation is more like a bubble or a salad, depending on which way we are checking it. Because Hungary it's a little bit unique in situation. Because before me, there were no or really low amount of free content available, so the information couldn't really flow as quickly as possible. But now it seems like I might have been able to pursue beginners to start to learn to like Gutenberg, even if they cannot use it, at least practice it a little bit, keeping them in touch about the full site editor, that it is something that is coming, and well, that's it. So like it or like it. And something that I have noticed after so many years of keeping the updates in the community is that even the developers and designers started to use like 100% Gutenberg full site editor projects. So because of the beginners and because of what was the WordPress culture before me in Hungary, they were going with Divi, they were going with WP Bakery, and that's it, nothing else. None of the classic themes with a few functions. Nobody really wanted to teach about the WordPress basics. After that, everyone was going for Elementor, and I mean, I'm for capitalism as well, but it is very dangerous to say that if you're using XYZ page builder, then this is the theme that you need to use because this is the best for that. And luckily, most of the beginners and most of the developers got out the memo that there are stuff like GeneratePress and stuff like that. So even after paid courses, people tend to get to my videos on YouTube. And luckily, with years of content provided, they somehow get this kind of like a pullback effect from marketing, and they get back to the drawing board like, no, you actually have to learn WordPress. You actually have to learn the basics. And this is why I said it's a salad, because you're swimming against the current with the paid courses. You're working with beginners. You're paying. You have like paid gigs where you have to teach on live courses for absolute beginners who will never learn full site editor for the next 6 months at least, because they need something quickly. But then you have developers and designer friends, and the bubble is basically the only issue here is just time. So yeah, I was trying to figure out something clever to say, but yeah, basically time. Time is the only issue in Hungary, is that not enough time to give enough information and enough help for the beginners to get used to, because you're working against paid advertisement that are actually advertising against your brand to get the beginners into their courses instead of learning WordPress basics. Like, this is where we start, not with a page builder.
That's actually a really good point, Barna, because I feel like from what I see with other platforms like Wix Studio or Squarespace or Webflow, when they're marketing, a newbie web designer or a designer could just get going and learning Webflow, for example. But with WordPress, they're usually going to get ads for Bricks or for Divi or Breakdance or whatever. And then they're like, all right, I want to learn Divi. Yeah. Oh, snap. I have to learn WordPress too. It's like a 2-in-1 thing. I actually have a Divi beginner course, and it's specifically a WordPress Divi beginner course, because you got to know WordPress. So I think that is probably a challenge for all of us, I would imagine, with teaching. It's kind of a 2-in-1 if you're going to use a page builder.
Yeah.
But same thing with the block editor. I imagine you got to know the basics of WordPress before you even focus in on the block editor.
Yeah, luckily with all the teachings that I got some partners that I'm doing like full day live teaching for their students on how to build a website for their businesses. That's not their primary objective. It's just like a side gig mainly. And with a few other projects like that, I'm always trying to teach people, okay, we are doing the homepage with Gutenberg, like going section by section. Let's try it out with this. Then we try it out with whatever page builder, and let's see which one is which. Okay, you learned how to do the home page in 10 minutes with, let's go with Elementor. But I'm going to teach you how to do with the privacy policy, the WooCommerce pages and whatsoever with Gutenberg and shortcodes, because you don't need a page builder for that. So it's just constantly repeating ourselves just to make sure that they understand that, yes, this is a step that you're never going to miss, or sorry, you're going to miss, but you have to learn it once you get to that point.
Yeah, if I could just expand on that for a second, that's something that I've seen. Again, there's like there's kind of two prongs of it. We talked about a lot of different ones, is like kind of like core, like I say versus, but I don't mean like, you know, like competition wise, but like core and page builders, like kind of where you're at on that. And then within page builders, where you at in that spectrum. So for I just got it heavily into the WordPress community portion of it last 6 to 12 months. And, you know, that's where I've really started to like just observe everything. And it is a very interesting situation that we have on our hands because of the way that, you know, the transition from, I guess, the classic editor days to kind of Gutenberg, how the project has flowed, how it's evolving, but also how like I would call like Gen 2 of page builders have come up, you know, like the bricks and, you know, they've seen like Elementor, Divi and all that sort of stuff. So that part is really interesting to me. And I talk about that stuff all the time with other people on the channel. So much so that a couple other creators and I, like, we created like a bridge builder series. So we're having like live streams of like this page builder versus this page builder, like not like just kind of showing the differences in a sense, or even core and everything like that. And it expanded out to other platforms off of WordPress as well. But the idea here is that when you start to kind of like bring it back all together, I've also been going to some meetups like frequently, like Zoom meetups in, you know, honestly, like a lot of them on the West Coast. And we've had some DIYers. And just recently we had a couple DIYers in one of these meetups. And it was very interesting to hear the perspective, because you have like, we'll call it 10 professionals just like us on this call. And we're all saying, oh, use Spectra, use bricks, use whatever. And it's like the blessing and the curse of WordPress is there's so many options. And I don't know how to solve this problem specifically. You know, it'd be great if we did, but like trying to like channel it into like more of like a flow of like, hey, this is where you kind of start. And I feel like that's kind of where we're going with the Gutenberg idea. And then if you need to expand, if you have to, you know, increase your tool set, you can do that. But I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges that I've seen, specifically if we're talking about like beginners, DIYers, that type of thing. And then obviously there's probably a separate set of concerns for people that have done it longer and are trying to scale and all that. But if we're talking about like democratizing publishing and for the masses, that's one of the big things. Is it's really great. We love it because it's very robust. But at the same time, if you're not in it, then you're like get overwhelmed, I think, extremely quickly, just from analysis paralysis is kind of what I've seen.
Yep.
Can I have a quick
that
question?
totally resonates. Yeah.
This is a question for everyone. When you're talking with your students, your friends in the community, how often do you find yourself in the situation when you have to describe the difference between, let's say, the Gutenberg project against whatever page builder? Because people tend to, in my case, they tend to say that Gutenberg is a page builder, and I have to describe it as, no, it is an evolving project that is becoming more like a framework, and you will be able to do X, Y, Z. So not to mix the two together, because sometimes people say like, yeah, but you can do this with whatever page builder. Yeah, but 5 or 10 years ago, we were using a little plugin to add an extra function there, even if it's just a few lines of code. And that's going back to the basics. If you like Gutenberg, you throw in a little plugin and you have 5 extra blocks if you need it. If you don't need it, then don't use it. It's just like going with the different mentality, if you know what I mean. How often this comes up for you guys?
Well, I don't give them the I don't give them the choice. It's it's a block theme or nothing else these days. But the thing is, there, like you say, there are sort of, you know, if you need a specific functionality, then you can just, you know, bring that in, like you say, in the old school way. Which, to be fair, you know, I'm actually quite enjoying sort of starting from a, you know, pretty blank canvas, and then, okay, oh heck, we don't have, you know, we don't have tabs in, we don't have a tab block per se in Gutenberg. So, well, but there's a, you know, there's a plugin for that, you know. Or there's you know, there's no icon block, but thanks to Nick, yes, there is. Thanks, Nick, for that.
Yeah, I guess I'll jump in here also. I work with a bunch of different types of people in terms of managing WordPress websites. Some of them are in the real estate industry. Some of them have been, you know, in real estate for years, and they don't really enjoy working on a computer in terms of managing websites. So when I'm talking to somebody who is not really into technology per se, then I ask them what is their ultimate goal. And if their goal is to be completely hands off, then my default, because I am, more old school in terms of how long I've been in WordPress, is I would probably tend to shift towards classic or hybrid themes. Hybrid themes more so nowadays. But if the person is more of a DIY type of person, then I probably steer them towards the block editor type component, because the way it looks now, we have to think about the future of WordPress itself and where is it going. And we know that it powers 43% of the modern web. We know that it has over 60+% of all CMS tools out there. And the thing is, how fast is it growing now in terms of how fast it was growing in previous years? And that seems to be the issue. How do we get more growth out of WordPress? And I know we're all doing our part in terms of educating our communities and trying to get people to understand that, ownership of your content is very powerful. That's what attracted me to WordPress, in the initial stages. I said, I want to own my content. I like WordPress.org. I could download the software, upload it to my server, run it on my own. Not everybody's like me. So for people who want to be more hands-off, I would probably steer them towards WordPress.com and then have them, take on the management of their own site. But it's, I think we're in a very interesting time, because we have the page builders, we have Gutenberg with the block editor, we have AI that is taking the world by storm, and a lot of these page builders are implementing AI functionality into their actual builders themselves. And then a lot of people are starting to wonder, like, what's the future of the internet going to be like? What does it look like 5 years from now? What does it look like 10 years from now? I know that, there's what was it, a 50-year plan or a 100-year plan that Matt put out in terms of where WordPress is going to be in the future. And that's, that's pretty ambitious, thinking about what the internet's going to look like. My bet is that it's going to be here for a while, because while AI is so important, people still like to have varying opinions. And I think that, what we can do is try to find a way to like direct the message or guide the message of, which way to use WordPress. And it's hard because, again, when you're talking about 800 million websites being powered by WordPress, it's kind of hard to say, put people into specific categories or boxes 100% of the time and identify what's best for them. So for me, particularly, I just talk to people and say, what are your goals? What are you looking for? Are you a DIYer looking to self-manage? Do you want to hand it off to somebody else? Do you need a management contract? Or do you want to just go like month by month or whatever the case may be? I know I just ranted there and just threw out a bunch of ideas, but
no, preach, go off. I'm like,
I also love what you said, Joel. The little quote, little snippet that you just said there is like, now the issue is you have to decide how you're going to use WordPress. And yeah, it depends on the client, depends on the needs, depends on a lot of different variables. I think that is the tricky thing. The other thing, and I've thought about this more recently, because I do help a lot of folks with the business side of web design and people newer into web design. And I do feel for them with the overwhelm of options. Like, I got started with WordPress in 2012. Previous to that, I used Dreamweaver. There really wasn't like that many options back then. There was Theme Forest and a few theme shops. Like, that was about it. Now it's like, yeah, there's so many options. Apart from different platforms like Squarespace and others, there's also just a ton of options with WordPress. So I think you said it, though. It's like, maybe our job is to, again, there's no right or wrong tool to use, but it's if we love something, I feel like it's kind of our job to share why it works for us and then help people decide what path is best for them. The cool thing is WordPress is still the core. Like, I feel like if Divi gets bigger, if Bricks gets bigger, if the block editor gets bigger, like, it's all still WordPress. So that's pretty awesome. Like, as long as everyone's growing, WordPress is going to grow.
Yeah, I think part of this too that comes to mind for me is encouraging page builders to build on top of core, where if you turned off the page builder, you wouldn't either be locked in or you wouldn't have content loss or things would break. So that's something that I know different page builders have approached in different ways. But that's part of it. Nick.
I have a fun question to follow up that comment. So you all have YouTube channels, and I assume that the goal is to increase the number of subscribers and people watching your videos. So what have you found to be something that draws eyeballs, whether it be a specific page builder or creating content about bricks, or, what are the things that you're seeing that are getting people excited about it. Granted, we all want to be supporting WordPress and whatnot, but like thinking about more from like a individual perspective, you trying to grow your channel, what are the things that are drawing eyeballs? Like what is getting people engaged with your YouTube content?
Can I answer that? So, for kind of my content, I have like a content plan where I've come up with different formats that I try and repeatable different formats. So WordPress speed builds is one where Nick, you've been on it, where we have 2 players trying to build a website in 30 minutes. I have another one where my daughters come online and they try and use a plugin without, like a beginner's viewpoint. So when I look at my demographics, I used to be like 90% male. Now I'm about 80% male. So that's been one of the aims of my channel, is to try and create some content that isn't quite so, I mean, I'm generalizing massively here, but that has wider appeal. Let's put it like that. So I'm trying to come up with these formats that are kind of unique pieces of content that you can kind of pick out, and they work on social as well. So I've done some around Gutenberg on that. So for me, it's around having a really good content plan that has unique formats that I know I can repeat quite often, because that's one of the challenges of YouTube creation, is to be able to repeat the thing and also scale the content piece of the business. So, some of my stuff is very shiny and short in terms of, I've done some of my most successful videos have been like WordPress 6.5 in 250 seconds and WordPress 6.6 in 250 seconds. Those go gangbusters for me because people like those short little bits of content, and they also work great on social, which I just embed directly on social. So yeah, I guess those are the things that have flown for me. But I think coming up with those formats, those discrete formats that you a bit like a TV show that people are going to expect them and they're going to reappear on the channel. I think people like that kind of ritual to a channel, and that's what's worked for me. And a big focus on trying to, I think WordPress has a big demographic problem. That the YouTube creators I've spoken to, I belong to another YouTube kind of mastermind group, and everyone is running about 90% male. And look at us all, guys. Not many females on this call, so I think that's a huge challenge for.
There was one who was invited, and me. I mean, I don't count myself amongst you, but yeah, I know. It's you that I've tried real hard, and there are not. Yeah, that is definitely.
And I shared that thing with you a few months ago about Wix have a Wix have a target of about 50-50, and I think they're about 55 in terms of content creators. So I think that's a big issue. That's a big issue for us.
That's a difference with the page builder market too. On that note, like my community is almost 50% women. A lot of them are Divi users and Elementor users. So I think the page builder market has attracted a lot more of designers that have come out.
I'll put all the money in my pocket. That wouldn't be the case for Brits.
I agree. I agree with that too.
So.
Well,
Yeah,
I don't know. Mark might know better.
There's 0 women. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know.
There's a few, Mark, right? But there's not.
Probably a few.
The Facebook.
Well, WordPress has that problem anyway. Like that is a problem with open source projects. If you look at open source data, there's very few non-dudes who contribute to open source projects.
Is that right? Outside of WordPress then as well, is it?
Oh yeah, it's because you have to. There's a level of like, do you have the education? Do you have the time? Do you have someone running your household? Like there is like a certain way in which I think you probably see the same thing with streamers, right? Like it is just an interesting thing that I've seen and heard from folks. And there's also, frankly, my concern and part why I don't show my face often on the channel is just online harassment. Like there have been stories of women in the WordPress space who've gotten harassed, and it's something I'm constantly nervous about. But when it happens, like it'll happen, and
one of my followers told me I had beautiful skin in one of my first tutorials, and it freaked me out. So I get it.
yeah, it's just the internet's weird.
I will say, I just looked at in my community, we have a bricks channel, and we're close to 50% females.
That's pretty cool.
Using bricks in my community, so that might be gaining. That's a good point, though, Jamie. It's a good point.
You get all the money in my pocket then, John.
All right, I'm in Ohio, so we'll meet halfway when you come.
There's no money in my pocket, so
that's the key. I'm curious. I do want to hear how you all hear about the latest with WordPress too. Like, how do y'all keep up with information? Is that a pain point? No one mentioned that as like something that's hard, but I'm curious what your strategies are to stay up to date on stuff, because that's part of what I'm fascinated with is like the communication pathways. Because sometimes I'll see a video and like it's almost right, and I'm like, you just, or like it misses one key part of the feature, and so that's something I'm obsessed with. Who I'm trying to work on, like the WordPress.org side of communication, that we can continually do better on, communicating the value and the impact of the features. So I'm curious how you all stay up to date with this stuff.
For me, it's Gutenberg Times. I email Yuan, and it's also the Source of Truth document. I watch Nick's videos. So, and make WordPress Slack is great for that. I think one of the issues for me is translating what's coming from a development point, which is, a lot of those documents are very developer centric in the language, and translating those into interesting YouTube content. That's one of the biggest challenges, but that's that's our job, really.
Yeah, I totally second that, Jamie. I mean, Nick and the crew's developer hours on WordPress.org YouTube channel is phenomenal. If you want to deep dive into pretty much everything that's happening right now and it coming up, but those aren't the sort of videos that we're going to make every day to sort of drive views and subscribers, because it's for devotees and absolute heads to actually get into. And like you said, Jamie, it's taking that kind of content, and I suppose this goes back to your original question, Nick. What pumps views and subscribers? Well, it's that kind of content, but more concise and succinct, and getting the message across fast. Yeah.
I know for me personally, the question about how do we keep up to date with everything, I have two main sources. There's a newsletter I'm subscribed to called the WP Weekly. That has some good stuff. I don't know if anyone's subscribed to that. And then there's a Facebook group called the Admin Bar, which is, looks not a lot of nodding heads. So yeah, the cool thing about the Admin Bar is there are a lot of block users and a lot of core WordPress users. So whereas a lot of other Facebook groups are more about page builders or themes or other topics, the Admin Bar is pretty focused on just WordPress. So I get a lot of updates from that too.
Basically, the strategy I've been using is, for years, I have Google Alerts. So I have WordPress and a bunch of different types of WordPress specific type of phrases that I get alerts from, emailed to me on a daily basis. And then I just filter based on that. WP Beginner ends up on it, WP Tavern ends up on it, Make WordPress ends up on it a lot. But basically, that's how I keep up to date with the latest news and latest developments in what's taking place within the WordPress space. And me, I'm probably one of those people that misses, some stuff when I'm creating content, because if you look at my channel, I take, sometimes I take gaps of time where I'll take a month off, 2 months off, because that's when I'm in deep development mode. And I end up using the WordPress beta tester plugin on my local development environment, and I'm playing them on there, and I'm looking for bugs. I'm looking at the alpha versions, looking at the beta versions, looking at the bleeding edge, the nightly releases, seeing what's breaking, trying to see if I can break my theme based on what's taking place and stuff like that. And then from there is how I try to develop the content I create on my channel.
I think Nathan mentioned in the chat, but I think the Media Corp, I watched the recent one, the 6.6 one that you did, and I thought that was great. I mean, going into it and everything like that. So I think that's definitely going to be continuing to do that. I just love video, honestly. Everybody knows me. Like I'd rather just consume a video even passively and understand and everything like that. So I think that's great. The other thing too, that I don't think we mentioned yet, it was just, I know there are always different topics and things, but like the hallway hangouts, like when I found out about those, I was like, why is there not more people going to these? Because it's great to just like have you or Nick or whoever like there and be able to actually have at least more of a like a live stream conversation. I know it's not live, but that type of vibe where there's questions. I feel like when you're trying to understand something, it's cool to read or watch a video, but if you can actually get like real time, like feedback and ask your questions, then I think that it just helps everyone, because you're going to have other minds on that call as well that could potentially give you like, oh, like, did you guys think of this situation? Then you could say like, oh, we didn't think of that. We could open issue for that or whatever, or, it's coming or whatever. So I just love the dialogue. I think the dialogue's always good. So anything that's bi-directional in that way, I think is awesome.
Can I ask a question to everyone? How do you guys come up with your content ideas and your content plan? What's your process? Mark?
It's pretty much what I see on X and on Twitter. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I will tell you specifically. I know I mentioned this like 6 to 12 months, like in this community. I've met so many good people, and I do think that the core thing, because I'm not involved in these other platforms like Wix and Squarespace and all that. I think the thing that we have to leverage is the community, because we have so many minds and so much wisdom. I'm one of the younger guys in this community. I feel like there's so much wisdom, and people have seen everything happen and see everything evolve, that just literally talking with other people. I do a lot of live streams every week on different topics, different types of products, plugins, things like that. And I think getting those perspectives is one of the things that I enjoy the most. And then I would say, as far as like the specific videos, I'm just looking at my channel, like a couple things. Like I think the other really powerful thing for us is like tutorial series or like full builds and types stuff like that, because like the individual pieces are really good if you're searching for something specific, but then you have to like think of like, how is somebody going to look for this topic that like is so nuanced? Like if you're making a tutorial about a form technique or something like that. So, I mean, just for me, a lot of it has come from like doing it in the agency and like, oh, this is kind of cool. Let me just make a video on that. That's like the best way. And then the other way is just thinking about, oh, I want to like rebuild something. A lot of like what you do, Jamie, like rebuilding like a website or a notable website or something like that. Like those types of things I think do drive people and are always relatively good ideas. I mean,
and do you have like sorry to interrupt, but do you have like a rolling list of how many ideas going at any one time? Do you have that?
I do have a list. Yeah, it just keeps getting longer and longer. So, it's tough to actually.
How long is yours? Mine's 425 at the moment, which is a bit extreme.
It's not that long. It's not that long, but it's
okay.
you got me got there. But yeah, I don't know. It's just one at a time, I guess.
I found
how do you plan your content?
Oh, is that to me? How do I plan it? I mean,
no, I was opening it up just in terms of what.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
I don't know. Personally, every time I plan content, I'm like, now I'm suddenly bored. It's always the idea in the shower. Then I'm like, I want to do that this week. Those tend to be like the best ones. So I've got more organic and like sloppy with my content plans as I've done this for so many years. But it's funny, like this kind of goes back to Nick's earlier question. My biggest video now on my YouTube channel is about how to manually migrate WordPress. So if you guys want to Google that, you should see me on there. That idea was just a spur of the moment. I was on one of these calls and somebody asked, like, how do you do that? Like, I have issues with migrations. I'm like, well, there's actually just a couple things you need to know. So I just like the next day made a quick 20-minute tutorial on it. That has lasted as the main video since 2017. So all that to say, I don't say that boastfully. I say, like, if you make a good piece of content that is a quick win and that is actually really helpful, that somebody can get a start to finish result, those are like gold pieces of content. I certainly wish I would have known that, because I would have made it better and more concise, but now I don't want to do a new one because it's still killing it on YouTube. So
yeah, evergreen
content.
Is
anyone here doing content outside of WordPress yet? Like, is anyone? Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I am now. That's really tricky though. Like I don't think Google knows what to do with my YouTube channel now, because I create content on some other tools I'm using as well. WordPress is still the main one along with Divi. But that is a tricky one. I think that's where if you have a WordPress playlist or WordPress dedicated pages on your site and just kind of have pathways for those topics, that's kind of the approach I'm implementing to try to make it.
For what's worth, when I was researching, like reaching out to folks, there were a lot of people with mixed content, and most of the time I just reached out anyway, just to see, if they were interested. Some haven't gotten back to me. You mentioned Admin Bar. Kyle was one of the people invited. So yeah, it's interesting to hear how you all are learning from each other too. Like,
did he not get back with you, Anne?
I think he did. I mean, honestly, I've emailed so many of you.
I will call him out. I will say he's a massive jerk.
I think he was game. No. Yeah.
I'll be like, Anne is so upset.
Let's see.
It's definitely going on.
Anne was crying on this call. I think he couldn't make it. Yeah, he couldn't make it. I can't make it next week. But yeah, we emailed back and forth about it. It's hard to remember people off the top of my head, but yeah, he did get back to me. No need to yell at him.
I actually really like that. Sorry to jump in. I
Mhm.
really like that
Please.
question, Jamie, because I had commented on Anne's blog post with sort of that, like I'm planning it. So I'm actually working on a content plan. And I think that's a really good strategy to just, instead of just starting cold. And I keep thinking about where are the ways to really contribute into the space because it is so diverse. And I think I've landed really in kind of three different categories. One being like aspirational, and that's where the website rebuilds really kind of fit. And anybody can take that on with any tool, really. So showing what is aspirational with WordPress. The other one is pain points. Like if you're somebody like, Mark or myself who's working on sites and building them for partners or clients, you're finding yourself re-explaining a lot of the same concepts, right? And finding tips and tricks to help people succeed with WordPress. And I think the last bit is a little bit more conversation and community driven, which would be this call, ones I've, viewed with all of you, hosting people and joining other chats where it's talking more about, whatever the topic of the day is. And it, a lot of times it is like this page builder versus Gutenberg tribalism, or it's just like the upcoming, features, which I think I've found the last year has been really, in my mind, a massive leap with a lot of the videos that are coming along with, like Mark said, I'm a very video heavy person, especially those short clips. And when you see things to get excited around, that I think appeals to a wider collection of people. And in my mind, what I'm trying to figure out as I build this content plan is how can I attract more people to WordPress itself? And I think it's a lot of time the people who are wanting to accomplish a task, they don't know like, well, WordPress can do that, right? They're going to automatically jump to some of the more focused platforms like a Substack or a Wix or a Shopify. And that's one thing WordPress excels at is it can scale into anything that you want. And finding the way to introduce that to people who don't know WordPress or, have maybe gone back to it. I mean, how many of you have worked with somebody who was using another platform and said, now I've outgrown it and now I need to use WordPress. So if that's something you can really get in front of, I think that's where the next opportunity really could be.
For what it's worth, I also try to tease some of what's coming next, which has had mixed. Sometimes I'm like, no, like this might be a little too early, but if I'm doing a video on something, I find that is like kind of like both combines the aspirational with like conversational. Like here's where you can check this out, here's where you can use this. Playground I think is really cool to integrate. I actually did like a meta video on Playground because I think Playground's a really cool way to get people actually using what you're showing. It's like follow along while you're doing this. And like I don't have the skills or capability necessarily to do like those really long, 3-hour long videos where you're walking through something, but I think that's Playground is really exciting to me because of that. Because you can set up like a custom environment with like a PR from Gutenberg that shows this cool new thing that folks can then like look at and explore and give feedback on, which I think is just like a really, I don't know, powerful thing coming up. I want to be mindful of time because I feel like I didn't think about this, but getting a bunch of YouTubers on a call is right for conversation. You all know how to present and talk, which is awesome. I feel like we could talk for 4 hours and it makes me want to do that. A couple of things in my mind. One, are folks into this? I imagine folks are into a call format just because of creating video content. I would love to continue doing a call format. If there's interest in Slack, a Slack community, or even a Slack group, like in WordPress.org Slack, I can set that up. I'm not sure how folks feel. I'd rather not create a whole new Slack community because I don't want it to be, I don't know, totally private and another thing to maintain. But if folks are into a Slack group on WordPress.org Slack, if you could email me after, I can like add you to a group. If people want to keep in touch async, if it gets too big, we can figure that out. Might be able to set up like a custom Slack channel or something. Otherwise, I want to run more of these calls and have these conversations. I think this is incredibly, like my notes are wild right now. I also would love, if anyone's going to work in US, I want to arrange a hangout, both amongst all of us and also with some core contributors, I think it would be really helpful to kind of get the insights that you all have more directly in line with like relationships with folks who are building this stuff, where it's like, hey, the navigation block is killing me. I don't even know how to explain it to people. I keep running into this. Like, what's going on here? And like, let's sit down and talk about that. Picking on the navigation block, because that's like an easy one to pick on. So does that sound okay if I schedule like a call in August and then we consider like sending a WordCamp US? Okay, cool.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And then just email me about, like, if you're into it, like, yeah, add me to the Slack group, and I'll just like add you to the Slack group in WordPress Org Slack. The last thing is just like a general last note around if there's anything that immediately comes to mind that I can do to make things easier for you all. I would love to hear it. I know Nick feels the same way. He's more focused on developers. I am very much trying to sit as much as I possibly can on where we're going next. Like, I am obsessively looking at every pull request coming in through the GitHub repo for Gutenberg, talking to a lot of folks like yourself and kind of looking a little bit ahead. So I would love to use that knowledge for good. That's the whole reason I started doing YouTube videos, was literally, it's like, I had this knowledge, I'm repeating it all the time. I'm not good at making videos, but like, here you go. And kind of making content for you all who actually make content at scale. So I would love to know what we can do going forward to make it easier. I'll drop the 6.6 source of truth, just because that's like a document that is like easy to reference for this upcoming release. But otherwise, please keep thinking about that and just message me anytime. I do want to have these conversations out in the open as much as possible, and we can figure out what that looks like. But I am really excited about this. I really appreciate everything you all shared. I just wanted you all to just keep sharing what's on your mind and what's been coming up. So I look forward to future calls with you all, and just really appreciate you diving in. I feel like there's like 1,000 things to follow up on, but that's why we're starting this. And I feel like there's a lot of good momentum here. So please, let's keep in touch. And thank you all for joining. I will wrap at this point. It's been a couple of days. If any of you are like, don't post that video publicly, just again, message me. Otherwise, I'll plan to post on Monday. And we can go from there.
Thanks, Dan. That's great.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you,
Everyone.
Bye. Bye, Nick.
Nice one.
Bye, everybody.
Ciao.
Bye.